Bonjour tout le monde, j'espère que vous allez bien. Ici Sarah Delagrave, coach relationnel. Aujourd'hui, j'ai une invitée très spéciale avec moi, Lillian Balsz. Nice to meet you. We're going to do the interview in English because I'm here in Hawaii and Lillian speaks English. So, I met Lillian here and we were talking about many things, and then she talks to me about her son.
Two sons.
Her two sons, which age?
They're 38 and 36 now.
38 and 36. Two big sons. And she was so proud of them. And one big thing that that kept in my mind was that at one point she decided to stop saying no to them. And as some of you knows, probably I used to work in a CLSC, which is like a social service in my country, in Canada. And I was teaching parents for 5 years how to raise their kids, and I was telling them that saying no was really important because the kids needs boundaries. But apparently you find another way to put boundaries without saying no. So I want her to share this and other things with you. So can you tell me more about that?
One of the things that we had talked about was the child's enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And when my oldest boy was probably, I'm thinking 6, both of my sons were very adventurous. They wanted to experience strange things to me. Bungee jumping was one of them. It had just come out, and I'm not that way. And when I told my son, no, that this isn't going to work, his facial expression and his whole demeanor of disappointment was tragic to me. And when this occurred, I realized that I have to find a way to make all of their requests a yes in one way or another. And so I rethought it, and I decided that from that point, even from that issue of the bungee jumping, I said, okay, I don't know anything about it. I'm not going to research this because I wouldn't even know where to begin. But you and your brother do the research, find out where it is, how much it is, what kind of gear we need, and I will make it happen for you. But the beautiful thing is, by the time these children, and as they grew, they continued to do this, researched it, however long it took, 95% of the time they lost interest. So I never had to deal with it. Anyway, so that was the beautiful thing. When they were very, very young.
Yeah, because then
that
you
was
can
6 years
make
old.
some research. Yeah.
Okay. When they were very, very young, I used to have potted plants all over the floors of my house in the corners because I loved the greenery. And when the first one was born, they're a year and a half apart, he loved the dirt in the plants. And I decided, instead of having to tell him no every 5 minutes every day
to put his fingers everywhere, yeah,
I just removed them. Okay. My son was more important to me than the things that I had. And so because he was so inquisitive, I didn't want to set him up for disappointment and failure even then. And I just thought about that one as we were sitting here. So I think that a way to respond to your children is that this is a great idea. I don't know anything about it. And you can even research it with them if you have that presence of mind. I did not. I didn't have a clue. So, and help them discover ways to create a plan for what they want. And that concept is still with my children today. They know how to plan and execute their plans.
Yeah, because really actually I think the fear of, I think there's no parents who likes to say no to their kids, but we think at one point that you have to do it, or if you don't, your children is just going to be like this little monster who wants everything and be really like will make it an adult which is not so adapt to that word, to this word. But can you talk to me, to us actually, about how your sons are, well, how you're proud of them now, how are they able to make some plans to, and to just
Um, may I bring back one more memory
Yeah,
that just
sure.
came up? I
Yeah.
remember when we all, as parents, we all have what we think is the best idea for our children. We really do. We don't
Mm.
try to screw up their lives. We really try to protect and inject things that will make them successful in
Mm.
life. And when my sons were born, I decided that I would become a health food nut, is the only way that I can describe it. I made everything. We had no sugar in the house, no salt. I mean, I made my breads, my jams, everything. And because, gosh, they're 38 years old now, 38 years ago, the health food industry tasted awful, okay? And everything tasted like cardboard that I made. So I can remember my son being in preschool, the oldest boy, um, and his teacher asking me personally, "What do you feed your children?" And I said, "Oh, I make everything. It's all natural." And I was very proud. And she said, "Darling, you might consider a little diversity because your son eats everybody's lunch because he wants to taste something that's one good
Sugary and
but
salty.
sugary, all the differences." And so that decision to get off my bandwagon was to allow them to start making decisions then at a very early
For
age
themselves.
for themselves. And so that Thanksgiving,
Mm.
I asked them, "You boys can have anything you want to eat."
How old were they?
He was in preschool, so they had to have been 3 and 5.
Okay.
You can have anything that you want for Thanksgiving dinner, and I will honor that. Because someone told me once that if you allow them to choose, their natural propensity is for health. It really is. That their bodies will crave the right things. Okay? So I said,
Especially if they haven't been eating sugar all their life, because then you might crave sugar, I guess.
well, you do crave sugar,
Yeah.
but
It's
their
just
body
because.
also craves
Yeah, something else.
something else.
Healthy.
So they asked me, "Really?" And I said, "Yes." So that year, one child wanted ding dongs. They're the frosted covered marshmallow something.
Okay.
And the other one wanted Twinkies. And a
Which
Twinkie is a white, looks like a hot dog bun but small, filled with
Mm.
marshmallow. Sugar, sugar, sugar. And I said, "Okay." So that night, I went to the store and we had a mound of Twinkies and a mound of Ho-Hos. And it was basically help yourself. And then we had a traditional turkey dinner with green beans and, all this stuff,
turkey.
turkey and all that. And so that's when we ate meat. And so,
We don't anymore.
yeah. So, but 38 years ago, we didn't think about that. So, they sat down at the table and we did our little prayer or whatever. And they look at each other and then they look at me and I do nothing. And they reach for the Twinkies and the Ho-Hos. I still do nothing. They expected to be reprimanded for their decision. And I told them no. So they ate and they ate and then they said, "Oh, but we want the other now too." Because that's also healthy for them and that brought them pleasure in a different way.
Mm.
And so I think that, again, telling them no all the time or directing them in every way where you control their lives, one, it doesn't give them the point of reference to make decisions on their own and to figure out on their own that this is a little too much sugar for me. Maybe I need to do something else. So, so they're accomplished men today.
So they might be really responsible because of the way you gave them the responsibility of taking their own choice really early. So they might.
Yes. The youngest boy went through a phase where when he was in high school, because I taught them to be responsible very young, again, not necessarily that that's the perfect way to be, but it's what, because of my life experiences as a child, I didn't want to leave them in a place where they were not capable of making decisions or put up against a wall without having the presence of mind how to make a decision. So the youngest one who learned, both of them did, but I'm talking about the youngest one, as he learned to do the dishes as soon as he could stand on a chair. They could wash their own clothes. They were like 4 years old. They would order their own meals in restaurants. Um, by the time he was in high school, he chose to live with his father. His father and I were divorced when they were 3 and 5. And they decided to have a greater experience than what I could give them. And that Christmas he came back and
You mean financially? Financially? A greater experience?
Not just oh yes, definitely financially. I didn't have much, but his father lived in the world more than I did.
Okay.
And plus he was male, so he could do things with him with the boys that men do, that women do not.
So just maybe a different experience.
Yes.
Not
yeah.
Greater.
Well, it was more adventure for them than I could give them. It was a bigger world for them. So in that sense it was greater.
Okay.
But not better.
Okay.
I see what you're saying. So the youngest boy came home. He's in freshman now for Christmas. And he says to me, "Do you know why I went to go live with Dad?" And I said, "No." He says, "Because I'm so tired of being responsible. I don't want to be responsible anymore. And Dad controls my life, and I'm good with that." And he needed to be able to grow through that until he chose then to be responsible again.
And how old was he at the time? Like 12,
he was
13?
Whatever a freshman in high school is, 13 maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was his, maybe because he's 13, his point of rebelling a little bit, about what you've learned and what you've known. The oldest boy, he's always taken responsibility very greatly. And in fact, it's probably his doing and his continence that helped me to realize that he was capable, which enabled me to go there with him. He was just responsible. And the other part that assisted in the responsibility was the communication. Mm-hmm. If I'm not always directing what you're doing, but asking, how are you feeling? How does this affect who you are? They get a feel for who they are, what they are, and what they want. And they're able to articulate that. Mm. There are many, many ways and rules that I was given as a child, that I brought forward as a parent, that my sons would ask me, "Why do you do that? Why is that a rule?" And my answer would be, because it's what I know.
It's a rule.
Okay. And then invariably, they would say to me, "Let me tell you how it makes me feel to do that."
Because you taught them to say such.
Yeah, and it wasn't disrespectful. We learned how to communicate.
Yeah.
They didn't yell at me. I didn't yell at them. And so then they would tell me they had a curfew, 10 o'clock. Sound reasonable to me. That's what I had.
At what age?
This is before they went to their father. So the oldest boy, if Jason was a freshman when he moved, the other one had to be a junior. Going to be a junior, so.
Okay. So what's, because it's not the same system in Canada.
So maybe 13 and 15?
15, okay.
Okay. We lived at that time in a very, very small town. Very small, okay? And they didn't drive. And it snowed. Okay. So one of the things that the oldest boy would say, "Why?" And I would say, "Because it's what I was taught." And when he said how he felt was this: "Okay, Mom, I'm the only one that has to be home at 10 o'clock. I have to interrupt what's going on and find someone with a car to take me home. It's absolutely humiliating and embarrassing. I'd rather not go." So because of my curfew, I'm disturbing the pleasure and decisions that my son wants to make, both boys, because they did everything together at that age. And so I thought about it, and I asked, "What would you want the curfew to be?" And he said, "Have you not raised us to trust us and our judgment? We don't need a curfew." Okay. So they didn't have one. The first night, the next weekend, they came home, and I don't sleep until they come home. And I ask them when they come home, "Oh, okay, you're home, everything's good?" Yeah. "What time is it?" 2 in the morning. So the next morning, I got up and said, "Everything good? Everything went well?" "Oh, yeah, they stayed in the basement and played games and cards." I mean, there was a small town that had nothing to do. And so I said, so the next time, for my sanity and my heart, when you come home and I ask you what time it is, just say, Ma, we're home, we're safe, talk to you in the morning. Don't tell me. I don't really want to know when I'm half asleep what time you've come home. We've never had any problems because I was able to trust them. And had we run into problems, we would have had to change the arrangement. But why make rules and regimented restrictions before they're needed, I guess? If you can communicate what they need and they tell you, what's the point of being dogmatic because it's how you were raised?
Hmm.
So, and
But they were already really responsible
yeah,
because of the way it's something. Yeah, you have
teach that
to
early.
work on that. Yeah, early.
And that their actions have
Proven that they are.
yes,
So you
and
can
they
trust
have
them.
outcomes. That means that if you don't like the outcome of that action, you did that, then change what you're doing if you want a different outcome. So they learn the consequence thing also.
Mm-hmm. But you were still putting some rules at some point, or just were you like negotiating rules with them, or maybe when they were a little bit younger, like between, for example, 6 and 13?
I would say that you have what I call them, not rules. They were. I was a single mom. We had a regimentation. I had to get up at a certain hour, get into school. So we had those things that had to be done. We have to get dressed. We have to, those things. I don't want to call those rules.
No, it's more like routine.
Routine, yeah, we had to do. And when they can't find their shoes, they learn very quickly that's not my problem. If you put them away and you teach them how to put them away and be responsible from that age, then their life flows better.
So if your son comes at you and say, "Mom, I don't find my shoe and or my hat, for example, because your shoes, he might have other pairs, but his hat, and it's freezing outside. What do? You just you let him take the responsibility of being cold for one day, and then he'll find it, or
I would probably participate in a sense of okay, so that he doesn't feel abandoned and stranded.
Yeah.
Where did you leave it last? Where do you feel you took it off? Where were you swimming? Well, if it's snowing, were you out on a skidoo or whatever you're doing? You help them a little bit. And if they don't have a hat, I probably didn't have another hat for them. They get cold ears that day. But when they come home, we actually talk about it, that these things are going to happen. How do you prevent this? How do you prepare for this? And so then they learn that. And a segue.
So that's really interesting. So if there was something like that happening, you let it go the best you can and the best they can, but then you come back on that subject
and you address it
and say what can we do better next time.
Yes. Okay. And if they don't want to do that, we don't repeat this again and again and again. It's basically, we've had this, you chose to do this. See you later. You chose to do this. Yeah. If you need a new hat, that's a different story. If you can't find your hat because you've not been responsible to put it where you need, that's a life lesson.
So you would just
let him go. The second day, I wouldn't even help him look, because we've already had this discussion, and I will remind him, well, when you find it, you might want to hang it on the wall or somewhere where you can find it later. But my children learned straight away when they were young that, and please, it's not like I'm this beautiful, wonderful, wise woman. We kind of raised each other being a single mom, and I wasn't very worldly, so I didn't understand a lot of the concepts in life. And so I believe that I was guided, literally. If I didn't have insightful intuition from whatever realms you all feel you believe in, we would have been in a lot more trouble. So I was open to guidance, and I could hear very clearly things. So that helped me a lot. But what the segue,
always follow your intuition.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and ask, if I don't know what I'm doing and it's affecting the child, who knows better than them?
Mm.
So ask their opinion, and they'll give you an insight to help guide you through
Because
what happens.
as a parent, what are we exactly? Are we like there to show them something, or maybe just we're there to support their um, evolution in this world? But they are their own uh, person,
Yeah,
and they have all those beautiful things they can show us too. So
that's right.
it's more like a supportive way of raising them than uh,
Controlling way.
controlling. Yeah.
I think one of the words that you just said was that they're their own person. Early on, I never felt comfortable treating my children like babies because I knew where they came from. Their minds were expansive. They were just sitting with God or whoever y'all believe in. Um, and they had no limits there. And I knew that, so that when they come into these little tiny bodies that do nothing, their brains function really, really well. So I always talked to them like they understood. And eventually,
And they do.
and they do.
Yeah.
They may not be able to articulate it, but they do understand.
They keep it in their mind, and even if they can't remember, even if when they're adult, it keeps in their
It does.
subconscious.
So the segue that I wanted
Yeah.
to go into, talking about being responsible about having your things where you can use them the next day. My oldest boy, who now has 2 children of his own, they're going to be very soon 5 and 3, a little girl and a little boy. And part of their life is very, very busy because mom and dad work. Grandma lives and it's their nanny, but she's busy too. It's a busy, busy paced life. And the children have different opportunities to learn different patterns with each parent or even grandma. And it's my son's responsibility to take them to soccer because he's an active father. And they cannot find their things. So, of course, he helps them find them. And but they come home that night, and he says, okay, this isn't going to happen again. And I'm thinking as he's sharing this story, and I'm almost laughing. He says, this is not going to happen again. He said, when you're with me, I don't care what you do on your own. When you're with me, we will stage the night before what you need. So he made charts, and they don't read yet, but there are words on there with pictures. And so they can see soccer, ball, shoes, whatever. And he'll give it the chart to the oldest girl, and he'll say, okay, you two get what you need, help your brother. Because he's, little. And so they get their things, and they put them by the door, and then he checks it, okay, then they go to bed. So he learned this.
At 3 and 5.
Yeah, and so now he's teaching them.
Yeah.
And I thought
That's perfect.
I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely
It
beautiful.
Is. And talking about your son, you told me also that at one point he said, "Well, Mom, how you did that as a single mom? Like I feel like I'm going crazy. How can you still have a life and raise kids and?"
Okay, when Joshua, if I go off topic, tell me, because I think this is what we were talking about.
Yeah.
When he was with his first child, he didn't have any children before. He'd never been married before, and he had an adventurous life, and he loved having the freedom to do what he wanted to do.
We all do.
Yes. Well, when you have children, you know that changes somewhat. And he called me one day, and first of all, one of the first things that he said was, "What was I thinking?" And that was about having children. He says, my life is never going to be the same. He says, I'm an adventurous man. I can't do the things that I did. And my response to him was this: you can still have adventure. For a while, your adventures are going to be manini, little bit, yeah? But if you don't include your children right now in the small adventures, you're not going to be able to bring them along because you won't have built a relationship with them for the big adventures. So what he does is he loves to go, I'll say hunting, but he doesn't go to harm animals. He just likes the gear and the stuff and the camping. Okay, so he brings.
But he go. So he goes, but he doesn't hunt.
Hunt.
Okay.
No. And so he goes with family. I think it's the way men get away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So he goes, and when his little girl was, gosh, she was not very big, maybe 2, when the mamas finally let them go a little bit, the babies, they don't like them to go, he took her with him. And he had to carry her on his back the whole time and what have you. Or I don't think they probably had a stroller up where they were going. And how he made her be part of it was he had a map, a real map. She doesn't know maps for nothing. She's 2. She doesn't read. And he says to her, okay, you get to plot our course. That is your job. You are the map person. And she looks at him and she says, okay. And so she pretends to do this. And
she really talks at 2?
Oh, she talks.
Oh, she talks
at 2,
really?
yeah. And so she's planning, and she'll tell him how to go. And it doesn't matter that it's right. She participated.
Yeah.
So then he'll say, okay, I'm not sure where to go next. And then on the trip, she'll take out, he'll say, here's the map, show me. And she'll say, over here. So then, okay, thank you. So it was a game they played. But later, I'm in the car with them. She's now probably 4. I'm in the car with them, and we're going somewhere because I'm there on a visit. And I think we're going to the zoo. And he says, okay, you're going to need to make a plan on the map. Because, zoos have those maps.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, in the zoo.
Yeah, in the zoo. Okay. So she's in the stroller. Her brother's in the stroller. And he hands her the map. And she goes, why am I always in charge of the map? And he says, because you do it so well. And he says, where do we need to go? And she just learned the compass, north and south.
Yeah.
But she didn't have it quite yet. And I look at her, she goes, we need to go. And I says, tell him we need to go up. Up, Dad, up. That's good enough. And he goes, okay. So what he's learned is that because he incorporates them in the little things on their level, they can now go ice skating. They do soccer together. They play. He taught them, and I wrote a book about it, that he's teaching them how to surf, which is his love.
Mm.
They don't surf yet, but they get on the board and they're in the ocean. So,
cool.
Yeah. So there'll always be more adventures, but right now they're building relationships.
Yeah, and they're still really young.
Yeah.
And one day they can travel with them and do lots.
They travel really well when they visit. Oh, the other thing he did, not for the young boy yet, he's a little too young, but at 4, they go to a French immersion school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
And so they're off at a specific time that's not like everybody else. And he runs his own law office. So he brings her in. They get, I think, 3 weeks vacation or something. 1 day of that vacation belongs to him. And he dresses her up. She is in a professional outfit. She goes to work. And she does business. He'll have her make photocopies. He'll have her take notes to the secretary. And the first time he did this, she's so happy and so proud. And then he says, and when we're done, I will pay you and we will go to the bank and open you an account. And so they did this. And he had it on video, and I thought, how beautiful is that? Yeah. So he's teaching her fun things, and she's with Dad, and so she feels proud, but they're practical things.
Yeah.
That he has found a way to incorporate her in his world. Mm. Yeah.
How beautiful.
Yeah.
So can you tell me, you were almost talking about that, but 2 things, well, one thing you're really proud of from each other of your sons?
The youngest boy, who doesn't have children yet, that's why I'm not talking much about his children, Jace, you need to edit the names.
Yeah.
Okay. The youngest boy, to me, has always been like Einstein, a brilliant boy.
What's his name?
Jason.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And he also was very much in touch with the other realms, very, very much. Okay. So he was very, very special. And in his own way, he didn't fit in the world because he didn't fit in a box, which for many children on the planet, it's really hard on them because we're asking them to conform, okay, where they don't fit. So my words to him were, "It's you. The world will eventually catch up with you. I promise one day it will happen." And so he lived a non-conventional life through his creativity, but I don't think he was really ever really fulfilled. And then now, as an adult person, um, he's always been a runner because his dad was a runner. So I don't know if he ever did that for himself, but more for his dad. Okay, he still runs long distance, 100 miles, that kind of thing.
Wow.
So he has great determination and stamina. Okay, I don't think I had anything to do with that. That was his own. But just recently, it was within the last year, he has had the presence of mind and had the opportunity to start using this magnificent brain that he has, and he's decided to collaborate with his brother in business. And I can't really go there to tell you the defining elements of it, except that the older boy is very logical about things, but he doesn't do the numbers like the other son does. He can really calculate and figure it out, the greater, bigger picture. And so for the young one to be able to have the expansiveness of his mind functioning and using it makes me very, very proud. But the thing I'm proudest of this boy is his compassionate heart. And I think that part of that is living in an environment where that was encouraged. You know, there was never a stranger to us. We would invite people into the house. They would sleep on our floor if they needed it. So he learned that.
Is it him that, at school, when the story you told me that when he had something to do, he been...
Oh, that was Joshua. The letter that he wrote,
the letter.
that was Joshua.
The oldest.
The older one,
Okay.
yeah. And he's always been where the kids would come to our house, and he would sit and listen. He had this open, compassionate heart. So he was like counselor already when he was a little boy.
The young one?
The young one.
Okay.
And so his compassion even now is something that I'm very, very proud of. And his capability of being personable with you. And you don't have many men, I feel, that really listen. He really listens. Yeah. And that's one of the things I'm really proud of, is his heart.
His human ability.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, his genius mind that he's found a way to do and participate with and make good money, so, yeah.
Cool. And the oldest one?
The oldest one, the story that you're talking about, which probably told me who he was going to be when he was growing, when he was grown. He was in junior high, and one day he came home and he brought me a letter of what do they call them? Disciplinary action. And that I had to become aware of what they did, sign it so that I was saying, I get this. And I look at him and I ask him, why am I signing this and what did you do? And he said, we have a rule at school that we cannot exchange money. And the reason they made this rule is because they had bullies that would take your money for lunch. Okay. He gave a young person 20 cents so that they could finish to have enough money to buy lunch. He was punished for that because it was an exchange of money. And
he gave
that
other boy the money he was missing to buy his lunch.
Exactly. Yeah. And so he said, you're probably going to be signing a lot of these papers because I don't agree with this at all.
I will keep doing that.
I will keep doing this, and I will have to pick up trash every day, and you'll have to sign. And so I thought about it, and I said, I will stand behind you because I believe in what you're doing. However, would you consider writing a letter of how you feel and the outcome of what's happening here, really? So he wrote a beautiful letter. They changed the rule at school. And so now one of his greatest skills is his ability to communicate and negotiate. This is why he's a wonderful trial lawyer. And
what a surprise.
Yeah, what a surprise. And also the way that his The compassionate heart is the other boy. This one he's a humanitarian. It's different, and he's able to see what's right for the betterment of all. That's what his law practice is about, not for the corporations, but for the human, the person. And because he can treat his children that way too, they will learn this. And so I'm proud of him for that. That he has this. One, a very good mind, the planning mind. He is able to execute a plan rather than just see the vision. He knows every single step, and so he's very, very successful. But also his basis of humanitarianism that he deals with. I'm proud of that.
Well, you have a lot to be proud of, for sure. And your two sons.
Yeah.
Congratulations. It's really inspiring. I don't know if you found it, but... And Lillian, there's another, well, you're really like a joyful woman and always smiling, and just your energy is so positive. And it's really important for you to connect with your inner child. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. From my experience, okay, and this may not be true for everyone, I did not have the most pleasant childhood. But keep in mind, I had 3 sisters, and we all had a different perspective of how we were raised. So maybe my sensitive heart made this action harmful, whereas my other sisters just didn't care. So this is for me personally because of who I am. So my life was very, very harsh and very, very challenging. And at 4 years of age, I can remember making the conscious decision of figuring out how to survive this, because the next years weren't going to be getting any easier. And so what happened was that when we're born, we're actually designed to have all of us incorporated. That means our psyche, or whatever you want to call it.
Different part of your personality, or
yes,
who you are.
I don't want to call it your soul. It's not your soul. It's
well, I think your soul is part of that.
Yes.
Then there's your inner child. There's your the part of you that is more like thinking and planning everything.
The logical human part.
I think we all have many different facets. Yeah.
So I would say we're going to call this the inner child, or the wee child, or my innocence. We'll call it innocence. If I had held my innocence intact, my pure heart, to be able to handle the life that I had, I probably would be dead, because my wee heart could not have coped. It didn't know how. And so at a very early age, I separated that part of me. That's that innocent part, which you don't see, but it left. So that I was left in the physical form. That's probably why I wasn't very grounded. To cope with life and to find a way to survive. So all the damage happened to me, but my little child left. Okay, so
and that's often what happens to kids also when they get really controlled, actually, and that's why not saying no so much is a good thing. Just want to make a
that's very good.
But yeah.
Okay. But at the time when you make that arrangement, however that happens, a 4-year-old has no logic. They're just trying to survive. And so I'm sure I did the best choice that I could at the moment.
I'm sure you did.
But as you grow up, think about it. The innocence is gone. That sweetness, that pure heart is gone. And now I'm functioning on the planet logically. And even though there is a basis of joy in me, I'm not really connected to my life. And so the way that I survived, literally, was, because I was very intuitive, was to look at anyone, figure out who you were and what you wanted from me, and be that instantly. Okay? So there was no part of me here. I was just a reflection of everybody around me. Okay? So as I started to grow, as an adult, people would question me. I met a lot of healers. And they would ask me questions like, when are you coming home? And when are you going to land on the planet? Things like that. So I had to really, really begin to research this. So when I was 30, I started down a conscious spiritual path, always feeling connected, but you go on these different journeys. And I realized that I was not present. I really wasn't present. And I asked counsel, and they told me how to go find myself. And because I'm very imaginative, it was very easy. And I found my wee child. She was 4, in the hollow of a tree. And again, this is all in your imagination. Okay, I didn't physically go find her. I found her in the other realms. Okay? So I got to meet her, and I got to see her, and the purity of who she was. And she did not have any of my damage. She did not. And so it took a while for both of us to understand what happened, because no one guided me in this. And now I guide others to come home to themselves. And so the process is, you realize what happened, that I didn't abandon her and she didn't abandon me. We made an agreement to survive, and this was the best way we could figure it out. So when she returns, and this is a conscious thing that I do, I ask her to join me. She lives in my heart. I'm aware of her every moment, and I communicate with her out loud. So it's like I'm talking to myself, and I am, but it's my innocence. And so as I live my life, I discover that this physical, solid person, this serious person, has a certain way to live life, and innocence has another way. And so my job as the solid state one, the one that survived, I have learned how to live and survive on the planet very well. I can take care of myself. I can take care of those around me. I can make wise decisions. So I can take care of her, my innocent child. So once I convinced her of that, she could live with me. Her role is to teach me all the things that I had to put away as a child. All the playful, joyful things. And for me, the little stuffed creatures, what you call them? Okay, and the wonder of life. And so if she held that, and now she's back with me, she's been with me now for 30 years, but really home the last 6. We've been negotiating for quite a few years to figure it out. And now that she lives with me all the time, I'm actually a different person than I was, because I'm home. All of me is home. And so that's the joy that you
And
see.
how you get in touch with her so
um,
strongly?
Every day, because I'm a woman of business, and I work at a certain place that I have to be there at a certain hour and take care of things. How she participates is she loves to match clothes, and so my clothes always match. She gets to choose what I wear every day. She's in charge of that. She's in charge of the way that I play. I draw with crayons. I have many coloring books, and we've just learned how to bring out painting. I wrote a children's book for my grandchildren that is like a 5-year-old made it, and I'm so proud of it. Maybe we'll grow and mature in our ability as time passes, but I'm really proud of this book. So I ask her how she wants to participate. And just recently,
you allow her time
to answer. Yeah.
And to be there. Yeah. To manifest herself.
Exactly.
Through you.
Exactly. Yeah. Because she is me.
Yeah.
And so a very wise man told me one day that I needed to return to my innocence. And at the time, I didn't think that was even possible. But because he was an Indian man, because he had told me this, it opened the door that it was possible. And so my greatest message is that we all get to return to the innocence, whatever that means to any of us, and it's unique to everyone. But that's where our joy lives. That's where the purity of our heart lives, and that's where judgment leaves. Because you can't have the joy and the judgment in the same, holding the same space. And so the practical person, the survival person, has learned all the earth things to help us live. But to really be here, you need the rest of you, the inner child, so that you can begin to enjoy this life, not just survive it. And that's when you begin to thrive.
Exactly. Yeah. And my last question would be, as a single mom, when you were raising your kids, kids needs a lot of attention, and it's good to play with them, to build that relationship that you want to have with them, but also you have tons of things to do, and you want still taking care of yourself. So how you were managing to keep your inner child there, keep there, and still doing all the things you had to do?
When I was first a single mom, the children were 3 and 5, and I had the grace of being home for 3 years, okay, with just the children. And so we had developed a playfulness um, that was beautiful. So I'm grateful for that. When I began to work, everything changed and it became very regimented and practical. We had to catch the bus. We had to go to preschool. We had, all of these things. And so for the first year, maybe, um, I don't know that I could respond to the little girl. I went back into survival mode. I had to, because now I had to take care of these children by myself. And so as I'm taking care of business, I become very, very aware that I'm dying. Literally, I could feel I was withering away. And I thought, well, then I'm not going to be here for my children at all. If I'm dead, what good is that? And so they were now 5 and 7, so 2 years passed. And how we got through those 2 years was not family. It was unique friends that came into my world, that they at least helped provide some of the necessary things that the children needed to grow up, quote unquote, normal. If they were involved in a sport, I could not. So they would give the balls or whatever they needed. So they had a lot of the things that they needed outside of our home. But they didn't have me, because I would get them ready, they're off to school. Then I would put them to bed and we'd have this routine. So one day I came home and I said to them, we have a decision to make. I can continue to provide for you the best I can, and you can have more things because I'll make more money and time, or you can have a mother back. And that means then that we have to get rid of everything extra, even our bottled water, everything extra. And I work part-time so that we can have a life again. And they listened and they chose me to let go of the stuff. And they chose me or us, our life. And so the beautiful thing and that probably wasn't exactly the question you asked me, that I found was that if you give your children the truth of really what's happening, not out of guilt and shame and blame, but the honest truth of what's happening, they have great wisdom. And we figured out how to make it happen, how to make it work. We would go on the bus, or we walked a lot. And we would go to, at the time they had little ice cream cones at Thrifty for a dime. Okay, so we would save, and I would save, and every weekend we would walk to Thrifty and get an ice cream. And what we learned to do during those times was to talk. To this day, when I visit my children, we leave their house, leave the craziness of their families or whatever it is, and we go for walks and we talk. That's how we connect. We close it all off.
Through really simple things.
Simple things. And that's really, our children don't need, they need some things, let's face it, of course. But they need you.
More than stuff.
More than stuff. They really, really do. And the children made that very clear. We used to play um, cards
Mm.
and talk. And little boys especially, they cannot stand to sit and talk. They have to be moving.
Yeah.
Little girls are different.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we would play games and we would play cards and we would go for walks.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I just remember because when I asked you, well, how can you, when you're in a store and your son or is saying, oh, I want this, how you say, you don't say no then?
Yes.
And you told me the example of Christmas.
Okay, so Christmas time comes, and again, limited income, but a lot of relatives on the father's side. So, which was beautiful for my children. So we would go out. At the time, it was Toys R Us. I don't know if you have that in Canada.
Yeah.
So we would go to Toys R Us. I would come with my clipboard, and we would go down every single aisle, and they would tell me what they want. And they can have everything on paper. And so they write, and I have pages and pages of every little thing that they want. And then we go home, and I say, you're going to have to prioritize because I cannot possibly fill this entire list. Santa Claus will take care of some, Grandma will take care of some, I will take care of some. So prioritize. And they would put them in order. And the top, I don't even remember how many things, maybe 10 things. But mind you, they weren't all elaborate. Okay, maybe one was some little something. Yeah. They made the list, and then the top items, even if I couldn't afford it, I would make sure Grandma would get it so that they would have the things that they wanted, so that they would know that to have things, the things that they want were important. You know, you don't want your children to do without. It doesn't mean they get everything. It means that they get to decide what's the most important.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one time,
Yeah.
my youngest boy, I love this. They would make, this is when they had to have been 4 and 6 maybe, or maybe a year older. I don't know. It's Mother's Day, and they make me toast and cottage cheese, and they're so proud, and it's wonderful. Okay, they learn to make me happy with nothing.
Mm.
Yeah, and then one year it was my birthday, and the little boy gives me a baseball. And I look at him, a baseball,
Oh, okay.
a baseball. And I look at him and I say, oh, this is so very nice. I don't want a baseball. Who wants the baseball? I do. He wants the baseball. And so I give him the baseball, and we learned that, and to this day we have this. I said, I will give you because you don't know me so much. You don't know all the things that I want, and I understand. You think I want it because you want it. And so I told them, you can never miss candles, incense, journals. And to this day, those are the things they bring home.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Because I still love them.
Yeah. Oh,
so, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much,
You're
Lillian.
welcome.
And I think one last thing I would like to say it's that's a beautiful new way, I think, to raise children that we're not really aware of. So it's really interesting to know that. But something that is important is that we we have to follow our intuition, like you said, and whatever we do, our child's gonna have some things to
overcome
or when they're gonna be adults. So we just have to do our best.
Exactly.
And what we feel is right for us and for them.
One thing I will give you an example that
Yeah.
way. When the youngest boy was small, the older boy was like my best friend. He was my intellectual equal. He was born with a tie kind of thing. Yeah?
Yeah.
The young one was reawakening my joy.
Mm.
And so one thing I said to the young one one day was, oh, you are my joy. Do you know what he heard? I must always make my mother happy. That's not what I meant, but that's what he heard.
He told you that later?
Years later.
Oh,
and
really?
so we had to work through that. That's not what I'm talking about. That you bring such joy to me. So they hear what they hear. They interpret it from their little young minds.
And you were about to say what they need to hear, but that's true because they have their own wounds that
Yes.
they have to to go through.
That's
also.
right. And so he finally learned that he doesn't have to make be anybody's joy.
Mm-hmm.
You're in charge of your own joy, and I'm in charge of mine, but you bring me joy.
Yeah.
Just your life brings me joy, is
Yeah.
what I could have said differently, perhaps, but probably would have still heard it the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So we do the best we can with who we are and what we have, and it's all a blessing.
And it's perfectly imperfect.
Yes, there you go.
So
Absolutely.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Lillian. It was such a pleasure to meet you and to have you here. And you're such a beautiful person.
Thank you.
And I suggest you to write a book about all that because I think it would be awesome. So, guys, I will tell you when she's gonna publish it.
Thank you.
For sure.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Let's hug.
Thank you, Daddy.
Love you.
Love you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.